Sir, I must thank the honorable mover of this bill for the opportunity that he gave to the House and to myself on behalf of the government to discuss this very important measure. As several honorable members have more or less unanimously projected, the object of this bill is that in a vast country of our size, it is essential that as many articles as are essential to life are brought under a system of price discipline which ultimately reflects into a label being fixed to a commodity on the basis of a reasonable profit and return to the producer and the seller. One can easily see that there cannot be any objection to it. As a matter of fact, on behalf of the government and myself, I wholeheartedly welcome this objective. The principle underlying the bill and the mechanism thereof, as pointed out by the last speaker and by various other speakers, are the two very important ingredients of a piece of legislation like this. Now, the legislation as has been drafted and proposed here is totally inadequate either from the point of view of principle or from the point of view of mechanism which it has before it as its objective. It is one of the most Herculean tasks that can be faced by any civil or other type of government administering any such vast country. I would therefore say what measures this government has taken since independence up till now in this respect, and they may be enumerated by me in a brief way before the House. We had enacted in 1955 the Essential Commodities Act, which had replaced an earlier ordinance which came from the war years, whereby the government was empowered by that statute of parliament and before that by the ordinance to declare certain commodities as essential as given in the schedule of the act. It has been further amended 3 times by the central government. It is one of the most comprehensive measures to bring under the orbit of legal power the power to declare certain commodities as essential and to regulate the sale thereof at every stage. My friend mentioned a very important point that there are many stages of a transaction. It is not only the penultimate or the ultimate part of it, but several chains in a series of processes from the weaver to the wearer. Therefore, I would only draw the attention of the honorable mover of this bill and of the friends who supported this bill that a substantive legislation has to be very comprehensive before it can be legislated on the anvil of parliament, and that is the most serious defect from which this bill suffers. We have in the armory of parliament a legislation again reinforced by the Defence of Indian Act with a very laudable objective which is before this national government of ours and every section of the house. That is why there is no need to have any public opinion on this. I do not think that anywhere in this country or anywhere in the world will people dispute the need of a reasonable price being charged from a consumer by a retailer or a wholesaler or a producer. That is an objective which is very much in the air, which is accepted, and with a bargaining capacity, one does desire to have the reliability or dependability of a shop when one goes to purchase some merchandise. Then comes the mechanism. A series defects in this very oversimplified, small, brief piece of legislation is that everything must have a central seal. In a country so federal and so vast as ours, to have a piece of legislation with a central seal like this will mean havoc. Millions of civil servants will have to be appointed by the central government. God knows how many crores of rupees will have to be spent in appointing this staff to have all the things needed to control the price in such a vast country. more money will have to be paid out both by way of administration and in various other ways. Therefore, such a legislation has got to be very much viewed with circumspection, and so, both from the point of view of principle and of mechanism, I would say that the bill requires very serious modification. Practically, the original drafted is untenable either as a groundwork or framework or as a basis. You cannot declare all commodities to be immediately brought under the purview of this law. There should be a selective phased approach. Firstly, we take those articles which are absolutely essential and basic to life, those which affect most the poor man's daily family budget, and then over a period, gradually we go along, and the social discipline becomes a national discipline which everybody understands. Various state governments have declared several commodities as essential to life and have stipulated certain prices, and in some cases there has been even the fixing of labels. Madam, this debate on the Sarkaria Commission's report has come not too early. It has been taken up for debate after a lapse of considerable time. Nevertheless, I welcome this debate. At the present moment, the center-state relations are passing through a critical phase. Many problems and issues have come up during the last 40 years of the working of the Constitution. Many irritations and tensions have been built up between the center and the states in working the Constitution. The Home Minister, Mr. Bhuta Singh, has said that the government has got an open mind on the recommendations made by the Sarkaria Commission. I wish the government had applied on an open mind, an impartial mind, while giving the terms of reference to the Commission. Madam, the terms of reference announced for the Commission had definitely a central bias, and the Commission itself has taken note of the terms of reference of the Commission. At the very outset, the Commission drew up a sort of format for itself on the basis of which it may make recommendations. This format influenced its thinking and its deliberations and its final recommendations. However, at another stage in the beginning, it has made one more observation, a very important observation. It talked a dual polity for India, but in the working of the Constitution, there was progressive erosion of state powers, and there is overriding and bypassing of states and their powers by the center. The Constitution has given three lists distributing the powers, the responsibilities, and the functions between the center and the states. There is the union list, there is the state list, and there is the concurrent list. For many years, the concurrent list has been enlarged to the disadvantage of the states. Many functions which were under the state list, which were already truncated in the original form, were taken out and put into the concurrent list. And the Commission observed that the areas which are in the concurrent list are monopolized by the center, and to that extent the powers of the states have been curtailed. The Commission has suggested that whenever the center wants to legislate on a subject in the concurrent list, previous concurrence of the state governments should be obtained, and it is also suggested that it should not be left to convention or practice but should be incorporated in the Constitution. In other words, there should be a constitutional amendment whereby a state government should be consulted whenever the center legislates on concurrent matters. The Commission has dealt with various aspects, for instance, the appointment of governors, the powers of governors, the rights of governors. Madam, on this, the Commission has made some important recommendations. They are not very radical, but some of them are very important to ensure the autonomy of states and to rationalize the relationship between the governor and the state government. The Commission has stated that at the time of appointing governors, certain principles should be followed, certain norms should be observed. One norm could be no governor belonging to the ruling party at the center should be posted to a state which is governed by an opposition party. This is an important recommendation. The Commission also has observed that a governor after retirement should not take up any assignment except the assignment of a vice president or the president. The implication is the governor should not be influenced by any ulterior or selfish motives in his decisions. I go along with the Commission in respect to the conduct of the governors in dealing with the state governments. The Constitution has said that after the election is over, the governor should call the leader of the majority to form the government, that in case no majority emerges after the election, the governor should call the leader of the largest party or the leader of the coalition parties to form the government. It says whenever the majority was in doubt, the governor should go to the assembly to know whether the government of the day has a majority or does not have a majority. But the Sarkaria Commission has not commented upon the reality of the situation that obtains today. The governors are functioning as agents of the center. They are appointed in non-Congress states, often from the personnel drawn from the ruling party at the center. And the governors are supposed to function as the representatives of the government of the union. The governor is not an elected person. The governor is nominated by the president, virtually by the government of India. So in reality, the governor is acting as an appendage of the center. I go along with the recommendations of the Commission in this regard, but say whenever the center appoints a governor, it should look into the qualifications of the person. He should not be partisan, he should be knowledgeable in constitutional matters, and he should have necessary experience in matters of states. Such people should be appointed as governors and not the agents of the party in power. The Sarkaria Commission has also touched upon the imposition of President's rules and Governor's rule. In this matter, the Commission has taken note of certain inadequacies which have come up during the working of the Constitution during all these years.